Okay, since I have some basic dimensions to work with, I'm going to start making some tubing parts. And I'll start with just a tube. I'm going to call it the pivot. It's the part. Now remember, the swing arm is going to be attached to the frame through some kind of a pivot. And I'm going to start with that tube. Mid-plane, that width that we had was 7.75 for the width. That's a good ballpark for this. Here, I'm going to use that same number. And then that'll be the one I put the bushings in. The swing arm will attach to this one. So let me save this guy. It's going to be SA285 401. I'll call it swing arm pivot. All right, that's the easy part. Let's make another one. So now here, we're going to try to bend tubing. You have to have the swing arm as it goes toward the frame. It has to get narrower because it has to fit between the frame rails. So remember, think about how wide the motor is, how wide the tires are. The frame is going to fit in there somewhere in between, which we haven't designed yet, but we can always come back and edit this. But let's try to keep this thing narrow. What I'm going to do is and think about just sketching something, because I don't know what these dimensions are going to be. I know that I said I'm probably got about 8 inches of space, but also that's going to be shorter because of that bearing bracket. Let's just make this, let's make these two pieces 4 inch. I know there's an angle involved and you need to call out that angle. And that angle you'll see is going to be where it goes around the tire. And I don't know what this number is. Again, I can always come in and change these values. Now make sure, because I'm going to bend this, make sure you put a fillet on there. Now the tightest radius that we can bend is a 3-inch radius. No matter how much you want to make it tighter, you just can't do it. It's impossible to do it. So I'm going to put the minimum 3-inch radius on that. That's going to be my pathway. And I'm going to sweep the tube on that path. Finish that sketch. I'll need a plane over here. So if you go to reference geometry, if you click on the end of the path and then click on the path itself, it'll give you a plane that's perpendicular on there. That's exactly what I want. So my next sketch is going to be on that plane, and it's going to be the cross section of my tubing. So now mine's smaller than yours, so mine's going to be a 3/4. Yours is 1/2 inch. I'm sorry, yours is 1 inch OD 875 ID. Mine is smaller than yours. Okay, let's take that and finish the sketch. Now let's sweep it. It's already determined that that's the sketch for the cross section. This is going to be the path. Click on the path and sweep it. I'm going to turn that plane off. And there's my tube. Now I'm going to turn all these planes on. Those are going to come in very handy for me. Now I know I'm going to try to fit this on the piece of tubing, so I'm going to need to notch that out to fit on the tubing. You'll see how that fits together here in a minute. In order to do that, I need to decide where I want to put that notch in. So let me just offset a plane here. Once again, I'm designing this. I don't know what these numbers are going to be. And your numbers are not going to be the same as these, definitely. So let me try putting a notch right there. It's like I took that original plane from my tube and I just offset it over 2.5 inches. I'm just making this up as I go because I don't know how this is going to fit, but I'm just creating something. So I'll sketch on that plane and I'll sketch that, whatever the diameter of your, oops. spin that around so I get a different point of view there. And all I need is that OD. It doesn't matter if it's hollow because I'm just using this to notch the tube. So you see how my sketch lines up there. And let's just see what happens. I'm going to extrude cut that, change direction, and go through all. Let's see what that looks like. So that should fit. I got really lucky there. I had no idea about that. Now all you got to do is if for some reason, if for some reason, what plane was that? That one right there. For some reason you do something wrong, you can change this number. Like let's say I decided it needed to be 2, and that's going to move your notch over. So again, I'm making this up as I go along. It's your design. You can make it look like anything you want. Okay, let's turn that one off for a second. So I'll save that. Let's build a little sub-assembly here. So let's start a new assembly. I'll start with this pivot tube. And I'm going to need some planes turned on there. So where was that tube? Whenever you're dealing with tubing, you're going to be using planes constantly. So I'm just going to leave those on. I'm not sure which ones I'll need. And then I'm going to insert that one. Okay, oops, again, since I started a new assembly, make sure you turn on, hide show, turn on your planes. You may want to turn on your axes while you're there. Okay, so let's insert this guy. I will need to rotate about the X. I'm going to start on this near side first of all. Okay. So maybe you can see the method to my madness here. What I'm going to do is take that and mate that tube to this other tube and try to construct, let me start over. Try to construct a swing arm with this technique. Okay. So again, you can, with that notch, you can click on that surface there and click on the surface of your tube and it'll constrain it to that tube. Now let's see what we have right now. So I need to locate it this way. Now that, I don't know what that number is going to be, but do you remember that width that I had from my drawing? That's 7.75. I'm trying to use that as kind of a baseline here. Again, I don't know how well that's going to pan out. And I can always come in and edit all these, any and all of these numbers. So 7.75 divided by 2 is 3.875. So let me do a plane here. Let's try that again. That's offset by 3.875. I just remembered that's the wrong number because that's the inside number. So that's going to be too big. Let's just try 3.5. Okay, again, easy to change if we decide we don't like that. Oops. I'm just going to go ahead and put the one on the other side. So it wants to go that way. There we go. So I got one on both sides because I'm going to have to do the same thing over there. Okay, so for this, I don't like the way SolidWorks lets you do that. Okay, let's just mate that to that plane that I offset 3.5 and see what that looks like. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now the reason I'm bringing this in, because this is going to have to go inside the frame. You're going to have clearance for your frame tubing. If you look at the diagrams and the examples that I posted, you'll see what I'm talking about. So I think that's really a really good starting point. I'm going to do the same on the other side. So let me insert one of these. I will rotate it around. There we go. Now I've already got all my things for mating it, so this second one will be easy. And once you figure out that first one. And so if you decide that you need to come in and edit this, it's real easy. It's a matter of moving some planes. You can go back to this. If you don't like something about this tube, you could come back in here and you can change the dimensions or change the angle. It's very easy. You know that with parametrics. It really makes our life pretty easy there. Okay, so that's doesn't look like much right now, but that's my starting point there. Also, while I'm here, let's see. I downloaded these flange bearings from McMaster-Carr, these little bronze bushings. Gonna have one on each end. So we can go ahead and put those on there. Let's see, I got a lot of planes. Let me just turn some of this stuff off. Don't know how much I'm going to need it right now, but it's easy to turn that stuff back on. Okay, so let's mate those bushings. Thought I could cheat a little bit on that. That's okay. Let's try that again. Yeah. Clicked on the wrong thing, I guess. So I got that face. That face. Okay. Nope, I got the wrong face. Okay, so again, remember, if you want it, you can always go in there and you can change that. For example, let me delete that one. Come back in here. Come on. Okay, we'll just undo it. Sometimes, there we go. It's easier just to undo. OD to ID. Doesn't like my point of view, perhaps. There we go. Now I got it. Okay. Now what I'm going to want to do is, let's go ahead and insert those plates for our rear axle plate. So remember how we designed those for the bearings to mount? I'm going to just show you how this is going to work. So what I want to do is I want to create some slots in there so that those can fit into the slot, and then I'll just weld them around and it'll be super sturdy. Oh, that was interesting. Super sturdy and really kind of streamlined looking design. So I'm going to go back to this individual tube here, and I'm going to create those notches. want to decide where you want the plate to be. Do you want it to be in the center, or do you want it to be on the edge? And kind of depends on how much space you have. Let's just try putting a notch in the center. I'm just going to do a sketch right there. And I'll use the rectangle tool. And that my bearing plate is 1/4 inch thick. And I want to center it. Now, I usually don't use 1/4 inch thick, but this is a pretty critical part, and there's not going to be a lot of material left, but because of the way it's designed, so 1/4 inch is going to end up being, I think, probably a safe bet. And the question is how far you want this to come back in here. And I don't remember what I'm going to work with. Let's just do 1.5 inches, see how that works. Back to our assembly, let it update, and you see what I'm going to do there is take that plate. I will need turn my planes back on. Let's see, which one am I missing? Oh, it's right there. I remember I was screwing around before and I pushed it out of the way. Okay, that's cool. So I can mate. Yeah, that's the center. Don't freak out. Sometimes it's just, again, it's just your point of view. I do want to have, for my plate, oops, I should go with that. Now, if you want to open something, if you don't have that file open, just find it on your part tree. So it's that axle plate right there. If you right click and click on that folder, it'll open that part. It'd be really nice if I had that plane right there, and that's a mid plane because the way that I assembled it. So now I can, or way I extruded it, sorry. Put that there. And then lastly, I can mate that surface to that surface. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, I like the looks of that. And again, when you construct it, what you do is actually fabricate this. You can weld around that and you're going to get a nice, strong structure. Now you can put these plates on the outside or inside. It depends on how much space you're going to have available to you and your width and your length of your wheel assembly and how big you want this to be in relation to your frame. So then I'll do the same thing on the other side. Then I'll assemble that to the wheel and tire sub-assembly, and we'll have a pretty nice idea where we are. If we need to, then we can come back and make some edits on that.